If the member states don't build up the infrastructure, nothing happens. If we don't sell enough trucks that are CO2 neutral, we have to pay draconic penalties.
Industriji je prekipelo. Pravijo, spravili nas bodo na kant s političnimi zahtevami, ki pa jih ne bo možno izvesti, ker politika oziroma ker družba ni ustvarila pogojev. Dajmo te besede konkretizirati.
We need to bring 350 terawatt hours into mobile assets called trucks. This is the infrastructure challenge. It requires 35,000 high-power chargers in Europe, and today we have 200. And it requires 2,000 hydrogen refilling stations, and today we have 120. So each month we need to build 400 high-power chargers and 30 refilling stations, and it is not happening. Infrastructure is and will stay the bottleneck of decarbonization, and that's the dilemma. 45% reduction is the target for the manufacturers to reduce the new vehicle sales CO2 footprint until 2030. And without that infrastructure, it's not going to happen.
There is a directive, AFIR, which stipulates in Europe how many charging stations and how much hydrogen fueling stations that each country should build. This is very positive that this exists. Unfortunately, if you look at the targets of that directive compared to our calculations on which amount of infrastructure we need, it's not ambitious enough. And on top of that, each country has, through AFIR, made a commitment on the infrastructure that should be built, but we see that a lot of the countries are not really on target with that.
Torej, problem ni samo v tem, da manjkajo naprave, ki bodo pretočile elektriko v tovornjake in če drugega ne, v gradnjo samih električnih polnilnic tudi proizvajalci tovornjakov vlagajo svoj denar.
We help catalyzing building the charging infrastructure, but the grid infrastructure is a different animal in terms of regulations and capital required.
Torej, bistveno večji problem je, ker je treba zagotoviti, da bodo te elektronaprave sploh imele kaj pretakati. In to je tisto, kar morajo države zagotoviti. Ampak tukaj nastopi bruseljska nestrokovnost, neznanje ali pa sprenevedanje.
And that's sometimes a little bit surprising. I still meet a lot of politicians who don't really understand how much more infrastructure needs to be built. They tend to think it's already solved.
Zgovorno pri vsem tem je, da se prav noben v transportni industriji ne sprašuje več ali elektrika ali pa vodik. Enotno mnenje je, da potrebujemo oboje.
From an OEM point of view, there's many similarities between a BEV truck and a fuel cell truck. You have an electric rear axle, you have an 800-volt system with many components that are similar. PDO systems you can use on both trucks and stuff. But then, of course, the hydrogen truck has added complexity of the tank system and the fuel cell system. So it's more complicated, it's more expensive. So always you will use the battery electric truck if you can. And where you can't, you use the hydrogen truck. Because the cheaper is the battery electric always, an operational cost.
Da zgradimo tako električno kot tudi vodikovo infrastrukturo, pa tudi državam ceneje.
From an infrastructure point of view, it will be cheaper to do both infrastructures because it's easier in the beginning to start with the electric infrastructure. Most of it is there already, but then to bring it to the full extent, let's say you have an area, you have a certain network, you plug in a few trucks, it all works. Some electric buses, it all works, and then there come more and more, and then suddenly the net is totally overwhelmed. And then it's cheaper to add some hydrogen fueling stations there instead of building a complete new infrastructure, because this will take a very long time. And there's much quicker and cheaper to add some hydrogen as well. And that's why we believe that adding both infrastructures will be for us as a society the better solution than saying we do all electric or we do all hydrogen. That won't be the solution. We will have to have both.
Kolikšen bo delež vodikovih črpalk in koliko bo tistih megavatnih električnih polnilnic, to bodo države določile same, predvsem na podlagi, koliko zelene energije imajo v presežku.
Once you have on very sunny days and very much wind and stuff, you have over energy, you can produce hydrogen, and it's always, better you get it directly in the battery of this truck and you drive with it. Because if you drive 100 kilometers with a primary energy with this one, if instead you make hydrogen out of it and you drive with the hydrogen, you will come only 33 kilometers. So this is the comparison. But if you have over energy, that doesn't matter. Instead of wasting it or not using it, of course you make hydrogen and drive with that.
Torej, proizvajalci gospodarskih vozil so zdaj zelo jasni in zelo odločni.
Before it was always this chicken egg issue, like, okay, the infrastructure isn't coming, but you don't really have the trucks. But now I think as an industry, we show in these exhibitions that more or less all of us have the trucks. So now it's really, really becoming an infrastructure topic. It's not that difficult. We just need to push a bit more and take some brave decisions.
Sporočilo proizvajalcev tovornjakov pa moramo razumeti tudi tako, da je treba doseči pravičnost posla. Treba je pravično določiti grešnega kozla, oziroma še bolje bi bilo, če kozla niti ne bi določevali, ampak ta zeleni problem zares končno začeli reševati skupaj.
This is now the time for politicians to couple the targets that have been set to the infrastructure development. It doesn't mean that the target is wrong. It doesn't mean that the direction is wrong. We need to decarbonize, but we need to set the right pace, and it's got to be realistic for everyone. This is not an industry problem. This is a problem that needs to be solved by all stakeholders involved, society, politics, and us. And it's not enough to just set targets for the manufacturers and set out penalties for the manufacturers. Now is the time to couple the infrastructure targets, a hard coupling with the targets for the OEMs, and that's not done yet.
Politika mora torej manj govoriti kar tako na pamet, naučiti se mora bolj premišljeno govoriti. Seveda pa so to pobožne želje, ki si jih državljani naivno želimo praktično vsak dan. Koliko so slišane oziroma koliko uslišane, pa je že drugo vprašanje. Velja pa, da je vse velike besede in vse rigorozne zahteve katerekoli strani smiselno slišati, a tudi jemati s kančkom rezerve. Premišljeno, ne kar tako na pamet. No, ampak kakorkoli, tako kot zgodbo z imenom 2035, bomo tudi razpletene razogličenja transporta spremljali v prihodnje. Zato se naročite na naš kanal, da boste prvi obveščeni. Za vaš naslednji klik pa tokrat predlagamo premiero enega od tistih tovornjakov, ki ste jih pravkar spremljali v ozadju.